Welcome to the Endurance Drive podcast.
Our mission is to share the key principles that structure our approach to endurance training and coaching.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Katie.
And I'm Elena.
Whoa, that's a twist, isn't it?
And no one was expecting that third one.
We try to keep people on their toes for episode 59, I would say. We need to keep people guessing. We never know what's going to happen. Maybe we'll release on a different day. Maybe we'll quit altogether. Anything could happen.
Yeah, we're getting to the end of the year, so we got to keep people on their toes. It's sleepy and dark out there, so.
Exactly. It's cold. It's snowy in some places. It's snowy here in New England. Elena, is it snowy out towards your way?
Oh yeah, we got some snow. Ski season is officially going. I still have not gotten on skis yet, but that will happen this weekend, so I'm very excited.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I was just looking ahead at the forecast. And the reason why New Englanders are so cranky, or one of the reasons why New Englanders are so cranky, is because we have a little snow now. There's a little bit of skiing. And then it's going to snow a little bit next week, but then it's going to rain for 3 days. And then after 3 days of rain, it's going to snow just a little bit. So it's going to do the classic New England, like there's snow, it's great, it's awesome. And there's a little more snow, like this is the best. And then it's going to rain and it's going to dash all your hopes. But then on top of that rain, that ice is going to sprinkle a little bit of snow on top of like, ha, ha, ha. So
I think the upshot is that you can't do anything. You can't bike outside, but you also can't really ski. But what you can do is you can be on Zwift. So it's Zwift season. Zwiftmas is coming. Everybody get your trainer set up, ready to go.
Or we can all be in the pool too, right?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my insights. So I'll probably push it to later. But the preview is that I've been back in the pool for better or for worse, because that's the one thing that I can do in Boston these days.
All right, so what are we doing today? Besides chit-chatting and catching up here, I think we're doing something a little bit different today. We're just going to go with riffing and training insights, coaching insights, and no main content today. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we've just all had kind of a lot of life stuff going on, and we haven't caught up in a couple of weeks. So we thought it made sense for all of us to just spew all of the insights we've had recently. Some of it's from kind of that pre-base season. Some of it's just from life circumstances. Some of it's from our athletes racing. So hopefully people will bear with us for another grab bag episode. We did this way back in June, I think, and it was actually pretty well received. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, should we start with coaching and training insights?
Yes. And Jim, you're up first today. We're switching up again. Take it away with coaching and training insights.
I know. Now I have performance anxiety. I'm always used to somebody else doing coaching and training insights first. And like you said before we started recording, you said you wanted to go first. I'm like, no, I don't want to go first. So
be brave. I believe in you.
Okay. All right. And you can stop me anytime now. Okay. So I just returned from a trip, for a city trip for 10 days. And I learned some valuable endurance lessons, even though I had nothing in my training peaks, which was that time on feet is really just this basic muscular endurance training. And so I spent hours walking around a city, and it was super challenging. And I got really tired, and I thought, hey, I'm the athlete of the group, and I'm the guy who had to like always sit down constantly on park benches and get a rest. So what I just learned is that walking is just a great way to test your durability, AKA muscular endurance. So really just a simple test for durability, nothing fancy. Is just go out and walk or hike for hours and see how tired you get.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I live in a city. I guess, Elena, you kind of live in a city too, although you have more access to trails than I do. And I notice that I get a lot of steps just kind of like living my life here. And I will end up more tired at the end of the day here than I do if I'm somewhere that I don't have that level of walking. And if I add up probably all like the TSS or activity that I'm getting, it is much higher in that lifestyle. So I have to make sure to like protect myself a little bit more and really, really peak volume, because it's not actually super helpful for the demands of what I'm doing when it's peak volume to get like an additional 15,000 steps. So that's a really good reminder.
Yeah, it is interesting too, because you hear stories. I mean, I've definitely heard stories of people who just are avid runner bike commuters and then can go crush their races just because that's part of their lifestyle and they're on their feet doing that. And I remember feeling similarly. I used to bike commute when I lived in Seattle, and it made a huge difference for my fitness through that winter. So I also now recognize that I live in a city that Salt Lake is not very walkable. It's more of a drivable city, and I miss that aspect of having that walkability. So I've added like 10-20 minute walking breaks around my block into my day just to have more movement on my feet, because it really helps. But I call it museum legs when I am standing in a museum and feel very tired, even though I've only been on my feet for 30 minutes, and it feels embarrassing, but it probably is good time on feet training.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently has been you would talk so much about, zone 2 and aerobic training and building mitochondria. And I thought, the other piece of this that we talk about, we say, muscular endurance. And I always just think like, okay, it's really the mechanical load, right? And so, we're really trying to train two things here. The aerobic is stuff we're focused on, but then it's like this time on feet, this mechanical load. And I think a lot of times, it turns out in these races, especially long distance races, probably ultra runs and Ironmans, is that you don't stop breathing. Like the person, he can keep breathing. It's just like your legs the mechanics aren't there. The mechanical load is just overwhelming and you want to stop and it gets so tiring. And so I guess I don't think about this enough. I'm always thinking about aerobic development, but I need to think more about like just time on feet and just, I have a couple clients who just signed up for Ironman and they're not experienced athletes at all. And I said, okay, here's the bottom line with your training peaks. We have 6-7 months to go. The bottom line is that you guys have to exercise for basically 8 hours, hour and a half swims, or maybe 7 hours on the bike. So 8.5. So after 8.5 hours, you're going to have to go out and move 26 miles, AKA spend probably 5 hours on your feet. So the point is, I said, listen, the bottom line of this whole training is that we're going to do some really unique things like hiking and you can go walk around a city, wherever you want. But the bottom line is that we have to figure out a way to get you guys 8 hours of exercise and then 5 hours on your feet. And if you can't do that, if you really can't, like for me, I was walking around the city going, I could never do an Ironman now because I can barely survive the 3 hours on my feet. There's no way I could exercise and do 8 hours and then move for 4 to 5 hours. So I've been sort of coming back going, what's the bottom line of these long distance events? And it just turns out it's mechanical durability.
Yeah, I think that's so right. And I think it's something that we overlook just because there are all these very specific demands when it comes to like the swim bike run, but so much of it is fatigue resistance. We've talked about a couple of times before, and there's a lot of different ways to build that, but being on your feet is probably a pretty good one.
Once I reframed wedding dancing after a long run day as time on feet training, everything felt awesome. I was like, this is just training. I'm out here just trying to, it's more bricks in the wall. And that was helpful to me. So definitely into the time on feet approach to training. You can adapt many things that you do at a time on feet training. If you're a parent playing with your kids, etc., all of that counts.
I love that. And I do have to say that I've been taking a look at our Spotify Wrap, which we get as podcasters, and most of our audience is in that like 28 to 34 range. So both in terms of being at weddings and carrying little kids around in a couple of years, maybe for that range, you are doing incredible fatigue resistance and you can have it all. You can still do your Ironman, even if you have a lot of those big demands.
And this reminds me of actually one of the points that our friend Mick sent on to us that we talked about in a couple podcasts ago. And he said he went and got a standing desk. And so he stands now for hours a day. And he said, this is really a big, as he said, he's a very time crunched athlete at this point. He just did a sub 10-hour Ironman, but he said, standing at my desk for 4 or 5 hours, that was a key thing.
Awesome. So our new training plan principles for next year is standing desk and walk around cities and get museum legs. And you'll crush your Ironman.
We have a whole new set of workouts here at the Endurance Diet Podcast. Okay, my next insight here, and this one's a little bit nuanced, so bear with me, folks. So it is sign up for races that are challenging but not overwhelmingly stressful. And let me explain that. We could talk through this a little bit here. That I think this is just a lot of social media pressured to like work and play at the extremes. But in recreation, and think about this, do you really want that to stress you out? And I think the answer is no. So you want to find training and racing a stretch and a challenge, but not really push over into the stress territory. I don't know if that resonates with you guys at all.
Yeah, I think it's a layered approach too. It's like if you have a really big goal, then thinking about how you work up to that. Like I had been running many miles doing ultras for a while before I even thought about doing 100. And I wanted to do 100 my first year of training. And my coach was like, no, you're not doing that. That's too much on your body right now. And I really respect him for telling me that. So yeah, I just think it comes down to like, what do you really want to do? If it's the distance, then great, do the distance and then find something that's like a fun way of doing that. But you don't have to make everything the hardest thing ever, because I think it can be one, stressful on your body, but then also stressful on your mind and your goals as you're approaching it.
Yeah, I mean, I had an athlete this year who signed up for an Ironman, and she was a level 1 athlete, and it was a stressful time. So she spent 7 months training, but every day she woke up going, "Am I going to make the cutoffs? I'm going to make the cutoffs." And I thought, this whole training process, like climbing a mountain, like we're only going to spend a little bit of time on top of the mountain enjoying the view. So the point is, you got to really enjoy climbing that mountain over many, many, many months. And if you don't enjoy that process, or it's just an inappropriate process, then it kind of stinks as a recreational athlete, because we're supposed to be having fun here with this whole thing. And this doesn't mean that you shouldn't, do challenging things or stretch things, but just like you say, layer that in. And my offer out to our community is if you're looking at events, you're saying, I don't know if this be stressful or if this be challenging, this is a stretch goal, reach out to me or anybody, because I just think that we're happy to talk you through this, because I have a lot of athletes come to me saying, I have these big goals. And I'm like, great, let's talk through them. And sometimes I'm able to talk people off like the really long stuff to start with. And then start with, sprints and Olympics and whatever else. Or maybe it's a marathon and an ultra marathon. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Yeah, we love to talk people out of doing really hard Ironmans. That's one of our specialties here at the Endurance Tribe.
That's half my conversations with people who come to me saying, I signed up for an Ironman. I'm like, did you really sign up? Or did you say you're going to sign up? Because of two different things. If you haven't signed up yet, can I talk you through a few things? But I do. I really think, endurance events, we're drawn to it because there's this transformative nature to it, right? And so ideally, the training and racings help us gain insights into ourselves and grow as a person. But that transformation just can't happen when you're under tremendous stress, like every single day. But it can happen when you're feeling centered and somewhat in control of your inner life and your circumstances. So stretch events are perfect opportunities to transform and grow and exercise agency. So go for a stretch goal, please.
I love it. Great insight, Jim.
And my last one here, again, this one's a little bit dark, but it gets light at the end. So bear with me in this one. But I've been thinking a lot about this, probably post-election stuff and all that stuff. But just in general, I really feel like disconnection is something I think we're all feeling at this point a little bit. And I really feel like it's the greatest, dis-ease of our time. It's disconnection with ourselves and with others. And naturally, because we're sort of always being splintered at every opportunity by the news, by politicians, by social media, there's all kinds of forces sort of against us to feel this disconnection. So for me personally, I've been turning down the dial on the news and social media and seeing how that affects my daily stress and mindset. And turns out it helps a lot, first of all. So I'm happy to report. And I find that the ruminations and the narratives just start to get a little bit more quieter in my head. And then I remember that we're just humans, and our brains are not designed to handle the level of stress and the news and information that we get. We have this very primitive operating system in our mind. As fancy as we all are with all these things and all these gadgets that we have, we're still like these people. We're kind of got caveman brains, honestly. And so we are really conditioned to interact with a small group of people and not to have all this stuff coming at us all the time. So after turning off the noise, one of the best ways we can connect is through sports. And endurance sports in particular can be a really powerful gateway into tuning into your inner voice. And so when you find that voice, you can move from your center out to connect with family, friends, and community.
Oh, I like this a lot. And I think you're totally right that we are on this planet for connection. We are humans. That's what we're looking for. And when we can find that through sport, I think it makes sport really meaningful. At least that's one of my biggest values in sport is community. And this sort of translates into one of the insights I'll pick up later. But sometimes when I'm feeling what is my why? And do I actually like this? And I'm kind of in a funk, the first thing to do is text a friend and go for a ride with a friend, go for a run with a friend, just do something that brings you back to those core values. And the other thing I was thinking about as you were mentioning this is it has been a dark time. We know this. It is physically dark outside all of the time. It is cold all of the time. It's seasonal depression is totally real. It's the weird time in between Thanksgiving and Christmas where everyone's joy. And you're I don't feel joy at all. What is going on right now? And I think you're right that being able to bring it into yourself and move away from the news stuff, the social media stuff is a great way to do that. So I've been feeling that in a big way, and I've been noticing it in my athletes. And I want to say it is okay if now is a super shitty time. We're here with that. And I think bringing it back to community through endurance is a really nice way to sort of find yourself when things are feeling totally messy and disconnected.
Yeah, I so agree. I love everything that both of you said on this, because we did not plan this, but I was thinking about this. It's not one of my insights, but I saw Jim had brought up this topic, and I was like, this is great, because I have also been reflecting on this a lot recently and realizing that even though I thought I was feeling connected because I was doing a lot of social things, a lot of weddings, a lot of friend travel, I was actually feeling quite isolated because I wasn't opening up to those relationships and really being vulnerable in those relationships and trying to dig deeper in those relationships. So maybe that's just another challenge there too, is really ask yourself if you're getting fueled in the right way from the social interactions that you're having, and can you show up for those friends and family in a deeper way and have that responded to in a way that feels that much more cathartic. Because I've realized that once I kind of just just got out of my shell and was doing more of that and making sure that I was having some of that deeper engagement through conversation, I was feeling so much better. So yeah, I think it's just been a really dark time, as Katie mentioned. I also love that you mentioned the whole not feeling joy during the holiday season where everyone's yelling joy in your face. So yeah, very real, and also here for that with people. I'll have a reflection on that again later as well. But yeah, really love this insight, Jim. That was great to bring up.
Yeah, no, I said funny. You said joy. Popped in my head was fuck joy, because right. Of course, we want to be happy, and it is a kind of a joyful time because we are getting to see hopefully a lot of family during Thanksgiving and Christmas. But yeah, there's a lot of this sort of fake imposed like joy and happiness and happy holidays. And sometimes you're like, fuck that, I feel terrible today. So
Yeah, and I think this season's changing too. It is so real. I was always like, no, like seasonal depression is not a thing. It actually kind of is a thing. I think I'm going to redact that whole, like, it's definitely not a thing. And I think too, like, we are also used to this type of outdoor stimulus that we've been doing for so many months that once that gets taken away, I don't necessarily feel the same joy in sport when I can only ride on my trainer and do my tech 50s in the pool and like maybe get out for a cold and gray run a couple times a week on pavement. It really is a huge change. And I think the routine that we're used to. So I would wager that maybe these seasonal changes can affect athletes even a little bit more. I don't have the data to back that up, but I do think it represents a pretty big shift from what we've been used to for like a awesome, super, usually joyful summer and a fun, gorgeous fall. And now we're like, yeah, this is the part that kind of sucks. And we haven't even really started training for our big season. So maybe as we bring into January, like getting back on training plans, I think will be exciting for some people and having a little bit of purpose and grounding. But just like you both were saying, stay true to yourself, stay authentic, stay vulnerable, and find real connection as you do that. Because I think that's actually a better way through than like grounding in a training plan that's going to get you excited for the trainer. All right. Well, I guess that translates pretty nicely into some of my insights, which are, I would say it's not a surprise based on what I've been saying that I've been like in a little bit of a funk recently. So I wanted to share some observations of just like the body keeping score of it when you are going through some tough life stuff. And so we're recording this about a week after Thanksgiving. And I unfortunately lost my grandfather last week. We were pretty close and it was just a tough week. I was able to be there at the end, but that's also a pretty intense experience to kind of be with someone in their last couple of days. And I'm pretty lucky in the fact that, I'm in my late 20s and I've had grandparents that have lived until this long. I haven't really experienced something like this before, but it hit me pretty hard in a physiological way that I wasn't totally expecting. And I also want to validate that this is like a very universal experience. All of us will lose people that we care about in our lives, and it will affect us in big ways. And so I started to notice that for days and days, my things like my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, my sleep quality and quantity, how I was feeling in workouts were like totally off the charts, not exactly right. And it makes sense because all of those indicators and metrics respond a lot to stress. And this is a stressful situation. It's a lot of emotions, a lot of things going on. And while I was expecting that it would be sad and emotional, I just wasn't expecting, I think, how it hit me physiologically. And so in order to kind of come out of that, and I'm still really working through it, I have needed a lot more rest than usual and have had to be really, really gentle with myself in that process. So what I've tried to do, if anyone's like experienced stuff like this or is kind of going through different life stressors, it doesn't have to be grief or a loss in your family. I've grounded really hard in the intention of the workout. So for me right now, that's like, I need fresh air. I need to get my stress levels down and optimize my mental health. And I need a little bit of gentle movement for my body. And some days that means like going for a run with no watch that turns into a walk. Like that's cool too. Sometimes that means I feel okay. I'm going to try my trainer. Sometimes I get on the trainer and I stop after 15 minutes. It is very different than really anything I've ever experienced before because it just has been kind of nonlinear. But in general, using less data and then grounding in community, I think is really important. And it was interesting because this morning I went out, I've talked about Back on My Feet before, which is a volunteering thing that I do related to running. And I ended up running like 7 miles. And it was the first time in a really long time that I was like, oh, like I actually feel kind of okay right now. And like, I'm really happy. And this is feeling fun. And I'm not thinking about this other stuff going on. And my metrics are okay too. So it's like, okay, bring it back to community, bring it back to giving back to other people, and you will find yourself eventually. And then the last thing that I've done is like, my Aura Ring has been yelling at me that I've been dying for the last week and a half. So I switched it to quote rest mode, which is really nice because it's a lot more gentle with you. And it doesn't like tell you that it's bad that your stress levels have been at their maximum for like days and days and days. So want to recommend that to anybody who's using an Aura Ring. But yeah, I'm just kind of working through it right now. And hopefully by the time this airs, I'll feel a little bit better. But if not, that's okay. And we've just got to all be pretty gentle with ourselves when stuff like this happens.
sorry, Katie. I really am sorry to hear that about your grandfather, and I've been there myself, and I actually just really love how you just walked us through what you were experiencing and then what you've been doing for it. I feel like I could have benefited from that at different points in my life. I have also, I mean, I think stress, we've talked about this before on different podcasts, but stress is stress is stress. I have also experienced grief periods a couple times now, where both times I was hit really physiologically hard, and you could argue that other things were going on potentially as well, but it directly coincided with periods of grief, and I could not train the way that I had been training, and I had to do similar things. But I think there was a lot more, at the time at least, like a lot more self-judgment in place, and that then leads to, you know, more stress on your body, and you're just digging yourself into a deeper hole. So recognizing that quickly and giving yourself that grace, and also recognizing that, like, even I remember being thinking like, oh, I think I'm processing my grief well. Like, I get sad sometimes, but like right now I feel fine. Why am I not running okay? And it's, to your point, the body keeping the score. And even if you mentally think that you're fine or in a good space at that moment, your body is still saying that there's been stress going on in the background, and that's what's showing in your metrics. So don't judge it, and do your best to be kind to yourself. That's the only way you're going to get yourself out of that hole. So thank you for sharing. And yeah, I'm sorry again. That's a really tough period, but it sounds like you're on the up and up.
Katie's got a big spirit. She's kind of come on. Yeah. We're all rooting for her. Yeah. So sorry that happened. I love the self-compassion, the no judgment. I think it's hard too sometimes because we do sort of take on these personas, I think, as athletes, you know, mostly self-identify, say, I'm this tough person. I do all these tough things. Look at me. I go outside, I run, I go out to ski, I do whatever. And when something like this happens, you sort of have to step back and say, okay, that's not my identity. I'm just a human being.
Yeah, totally. And I think this actually has been a really valuable learning experience in kind of like some self-compassion recently, because I will say in the first couple of days that things were off, my default was to like dig deeper and be like, all right, well, I will run faster and I'll just like whatever and it's fine. And that was not serving me. Like, that was, if the stress levels were at like 99, that was bringing them to 100 pretty quickly. And I will say I had a pretty big turning point where I got on Zwift. This was like a day or two before we drove up to Maine, which is where my grandparents live. And I like got on the trainer, and I don't think I've ever done this before, but my heart rate was like 150 for like 120. It was just this huge, crazy gap that was like all these alarm bells of like, something is not right, something is not right. And for the first time ever, I actually just stopped 15 minutes in, and I just said like, this is not serving me today, and that's okay. And I think I need to just get off the bike and put on some cozy sweatpants and just like make some tea right now. And that's something that I never would have done for probably years and years and years. I will say too that I recently went through this ankle injury and took a lot more rest than I'd taken in the past. And I was like, I think it'll help me the next time that I need to take rest. And it certainly did, because I was like, well, I'm not going to die. Like, I will actually be okay if this happens. But yeah, I mean, I think advice for everyone out there is just try to give yourself a little bit of grace. And it might take you days and days and days and days of giving yourself grace and way more rest than you've ever taken before. And you will also be okay. And you'll probably be okay faster if you do that than if you just push through. So trying to live by those principles now. And yeah, hoping we're turning a corner pretty soon.
It is hard too, because the things that got you to the place you are today, the hard work, the driving, like those serve you in lots of different ways. Like in your career, they serve you like in a long distance race or a long day in the mountains. Like when things get hard, like I can do hard things. I'm going to do hard things. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to work even harder. And so I don't know. I think we're all getting a little bit better and a little more self-aware, like in just like, okay, that doesn't serve me today. That attribute is great, and I embrace that. That's part of me. It's a big part of me, but it's not serving me today.
Well, it's interesting you said that, Jim, actually, because I will say this one hesitation that I've had about self-compassion for a little while is like, if I start being compassionate with myself, like what happens? Like, will I ever exercise again? Will I ever work again? Will I just like get a latte and a massage every single day for the rest of my life? And that's what happens. And I think the answer is probably not. But this actually translates right into my second insight, which is whenever I start to like, fall off my workout train for whatever reason, like I will question my why a little bit. And I'm like, why am I really doing this? Is this serving me? Am I doing this because I just push myself all the time? Sometimes that means I'm burnt out. Sometimes it means I'm overtired. But what I've tried to do when that happens, because honestly, I have this like existential crisis probably quarterly at this point. And what I'll do is I'll try and get curious about like where that's coming from. So I usually will like turn off Strava for a couple of days and just kind of focus on what I want to do. I'll do stuff with less data. I'll text a friend and do social things like we were talking about. And almost every time it comes back to me realizing that joy and health and community, all these things that we value a lot, are very separate from me pushing myself as hard as I can. That doesn't mean I don't love running, and it doesn't mean I don't love training. But I will probably have to come back and re-listen to this when I have this existential crisis again in like 2 to 3 months, because it does happen pretty frequently. And yeah, I think a lot of us can be really, really driven as athletes and need more on the other side of things. And that doesn't mean that you aren't an athlete or you can't do a sport if you just need to take a little break.
Yes, this really, really resonates. Especially like the question of, if I'm being self-compassionate, or maybe just, like if I'm listening to my body needs a lot of rest. And when do I know that I can get back out there again? Like, how do I know that I can also push forward? And one thing that a coach told me one time that I found really helpful, and I've tried to practice, although it's, much easier said than done. Maybe it's like a do as I say and not as I do exactly kind of thing. But he was like, don't run for until you get the fire back to go run again. Even if you like think that you should, but you're not feeling like super excited to run, I don't want you to run. And it might take a week, it might take 3 weeks, it might take longer. Just wait for that. And that in that moment really helped me, because I took way more rest than I ever had. And to your point, it wasn't that I wasn't doing anything. I just wasn't running. I walked, I biked, I focused on social things, and like it truly did come back. Like I was just like, oh, I'm really excited to go run. It's sunny out. I'm excited to be outside. I want to do this thing with my friend. So I think just like really tuning into your gut there can be really helpful. And I also have that existential question a lot. I've been having it recently as well. So I will flag this part of our podcast on episode 59 and come back to it when I need to. But at least in this moment right now, I think it is really grounding to think that way.
I actually chuckled when I saw quarterly existential crisis, and I thought, quarterly, that's incredible. That's great. I like, how about daily or weekly? Like, come on now. Wow, Katie's doing so well if it's only quarterly. It's incredible.
I know. I agree with the daily. I'm daily, man.
But the other thought I had too is also this, you're taking time or just sort of evaluating. And I think, now we've mentioned this before, it's the off season or the base season. And sometimes I will feel like, hey, I'm ready to go. I got the fire. I'm ready to do more and more and more and more and more. And then I look around and say, okay, well, what does my support system need? What does my wife need? Like, there are things that's like, okay, maybe today I just need to like not go for a run or go for a bike ride and take care of like some business at home and spend time and build those relationships, right? And so I think that I think as athletes, we're always sort of saying like, what do I need? Like, should I be pushing forward? Should I be taking some time off? But then I've been trying to get a little bit better about saying, okay, there's me, but then there's like this really close support network that allows me to do all these things, especially when it gets super intense. Like, it always gets super intense and busy in the spring and summer. So it's like, okay, how can I take care of some relationships now that at least help me build us up a little bit, right? Build that relationship foundation now.
Yeah, I totally feel that. And it's like giving back to other people, I think, is one thing that can really bring you out of like your own funk when that's going on. But that can be true. Well, it's also true that you kind of have to put on your own mask before you put on other people's masks. So I'm always sort of towing that line of like, all right, what is the bare minimum for me to be okay right this second? And then how can I give back? And then if everybody's sort of like in a good place, then we can kind of fold back in those things. And so realistically for me, like, yeah, I didn't work out for like several days last week because I was doing a lot with my family and for my family. And we were in the hospital for like 12 hours for multiple days. And it's just a lot to do that. And I think that it was actually easier for me to say like, oh, it's totally okay that I didn't work out today because I was giving back to other people. The final frontier is really being fully and totally okay with just taking the day off. For me, I'm still kind of like, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not. I'm certainly better than I used to be about it. But it'll be an evolving process. And I think I just want to keep challenging myself to both be there for others and have the same level of compassion for myself as I have for others. I think we can think about that as coaches a lot, right? Like people always say to me, usually in a more therapeutic context, is like, how would you approach this for one of your athletes? And I'm like, I'd be so much nicer than I would be to myself. Then you got to turn around and like talk to yourself in that way. So anyway, do as I say, not as I do, I guess, except when I do it right, which is not that, maybe quarterly. So yeah, it's a big process though. Sweet. Okay. Well, I think that's enough of my existential crises and brief processing. On a lighter note, another insight that I have is that I've started building out some training plans for 2025. So kudos to athletes that are getting started right now. I have had a lot of kind of kicking off the season calls in the last week, and that's been a really fun thing to focus on and a little bit of a nice distraction. So many people now in December are doing what I'm calling like a pre-base season. And so if you're listening to this and maybe you're not coached by us, but you feel like you want to get started training, and you still don't have a race till the summer or so, I think pre-base is a really good thing to do. So the way that I think about pre-base is basically a focus on good quality strength training. So we've talked about that. It's sort of the end of the off season. You should be lifting heavy, maybe 3 times a week. I also think of it as a time to kind of return to just some swim, bike, run consistency. If you're training for triathlon, if you're training for trail running, it can just be more consistency and frequency of your runs. But I'll usually give people like 1 to 2-ish of each sport per week, depending on their experience level. If you're a brand new athlete, sometimes it's going to be a lot to have 3 strengths, 1 swim, 1 bike, and 1 run. If there are other people who have a lot more experience, they can maybe get into doubles even now, especially paired with a strength. And then for the swim, bike, run that's happening, it is all base foundation for base season. So all zone 2 type stuff. We have a lot of zone 2 bike workouts, a lot of zone 2 run stuff, but the volume isn't super high just yet, especially because the holidays are coming. It is crazy. It's really hard to get all that stuff in. So anyway, this has been feeling really exciting for me. And I think I am starting to get that sense of fire as I build plans for other people where I'm like, okay, like maybe soonish I might be ready for a pre-base season. And that's always kind of fun and exciting. So I can expect to be doing that maybe in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, just excited to kick off this new season and excited for all the athletes.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I've been finding myself just like same phone calls, and it's like, this is 2025 is coming. This is amazing. And working on some long range plans. And also, for probably for all of us, we have some returning athletes. And now we've got athletes who've worked with us for many, many years. And you say, hey, we've done this in the last couple of years, but then this year we're gonna really do this, and it's gonna be different, and it's gonna be more intense or whatever it is, or longer, or better, or faster. So I just think it's really fun. We have a lot of tricks in our bag to pull out year after year to progress our athletes. And so that's exciting. And then I think the other thing too I've noticed too is in some of these pre-phone calls is that I want to shout out to all the athletes who do listen to this podcast, because I've noticed that there's been the quality difference of the conversations are different with the athletes who kind of follow us on a regular basis, because we're kind of spewing out like all the stuff we learn all the time. And so they hear this. And so our conversations just immediately get very deep and very substantial very, very quickly. And I feel like we just cover so much more ground in they say like a 30-minute phone call. So I just wanted to say, just shout out to all the folks who are listening to us and bearing with us as we go blah, all this stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I've noticed that too with our athletes. And sometimes athletes will mention some random insight that I had like in episode 17. And I'm like, wow, that's a good insight. I don't remember saying that, but I'm glad that it stuck. And I'm glad that you're using it in your workouts because it's something that I could certainly listen to. So it's good accountability for us as well as coaches. Okay, my last insight. Can't believe I'm ending on this one. This feels like a sort of sad way to end. It's not sad, but maybe it is sad. It is that against all odds, I am back in the pool, as I said before, and want to just talk a little bit about what that has looked like and felt like. I've been in the pool maybe once or twice a week for the last couple of weeks in the context of a good amount of rest. And I found that the pool has actually been good because that's a place where I am only focused on technique. And I've actually just taken my watch off and just gotten in and kind of splashed around. And I've used the principle, Jim, actually, that you've said many times on the podcast, which is that the wind is getting wet. If you just get in the pool, that counts for swimming at this time of year. So what that has looked like as I've been trying to just like make it a little bit more of my routine is all kind of technical 50s, sometimes technical 100s, and a ton of gear. So I will throw on my fins. I will throw on the long fins, as we've talked about. I will throw on my paddles. I've got a pull buoy. I've got a snorkel, all this stuff. And I'm just really trying to get a good feel for the water. If I feel good on any given day, I'll throw in just a couple of fast 25s or fast 50s. Again, these are not taking more than like 40 seconds. They're very, very quick. If it's 25s, it might be 16 seconds, 17 seconds. But it's enough to it's sort of like a hill stride or a run stride, just getting a little bit of a feel for that speed. And I think this is a great thing to be focusing on in pre-base, where we're not trying to get any like quality swim workouts in. But I think the transition into swim workouts will be so much easier if I've at least just made the pool part of my routine. So my advice to anyone who's just getting started right now is make the pool part of your routine. If you just get in the water, that's all that it's about, just because that in and of itself is a pretty big ask. And then it'll be a lot easier once you transition into real swimming a little bit later in the season.
Yeah, I love this. And I think, we talk about this exercise snacks, and I still stand by that 30 minutes in the pool. You can actually get a lot done. Like you can get 30 minutes on running is great. 30 minutes of biking is great. 30 minutes in the pool, I don't know, it feels like 2 hours for me, actually, 30 minutes. But if you just have a lunch break and because it takes time to get there and change, blah, blah, blah. If you only have 30 minutes or even 25 minutes in the pool, get in the pool. It's awesome. Who cares if you swim? I always tell my athletes, I don't care if you swim 500 yards or 1,500 yards. It doesn't matter. Like you're there, you're in the water, you're working on it. So I don't know. Kudos to you for getting in the water because, geez, I'm not in the water yet.
Thank you. And I will certainly be gentle with myself if this falls apart. I'm saying I've been consistent in the pool. This just means I've been in the pool like once a week for the last couple of weeks. So if it falls apart anytime soon, I will have some compassion.
I feel like there's something kind of exciting about swimming right now. It just feels like so dreary and cold that it's like maybe kind of summery, like just to mix it up. That's inspiring me. I might go to our local pool tomorrow. It just sounds fun.
Wow. If we make you a swimmer on this podcast, that will be serious mission. I mean, I know you can swim well, but just like to get in the pool, that'd be huge. That's awesome.
I'll try. We'll see. I'll report back if I actually make it, but it just sounds kind of exciting right now. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Elena, you're up. Coaching and training insights.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will extend a little bit on what we've already talked about. So we'll just hit those relatively quickly. And then I have one larger kind of race-based one to go over. So first for me, I had seen that Katie had used the phrase body keeps the score. And that's just been something that's been in my head for the entire like last 6 to 8 months, I would say. I feel like I'm still trying to rebuild my body from what felt like too much chronic stress that kind of overwhelmed my body maybe back in May-ish timeframe, May, June, and have not really been able to get back into like solid normal training. But along with that, I've had to learn a lot of strategies of how can I take stress off and how with where I am right now, can I set reasonable expectations to get myself to where I want to get to. And my husband was joking with me because I've had a lot of moments where I take 2 steps forward, 1.5 steps back, that kind of thing. And he was saying, hey, I think that you just want to be where you were, which is like 10 steps ahead of where you are right now. And you need to figure out how to set these reasonable expectations so that you're not spiraling when things aren't going well. And I was like, that's very true. And we have this new strategy that's been helpful to me, which is just setting reasonable expectations with time blocks. So I need the structure. I like the structure, but I'm not doing what I used to be doing. So I'm honoring workout time with whatever my body needs that day, whether that be walking and some mobility, or on a good day, it's running and strength. And it looks different, but I have like a 2-hour block where I'm like, this is my me time and it's me getting out there. And I'm doing the same thing for work too, like for actual like writing reports or making slides or whatnot. It's, hey, I might not get everything done that I want to get done, but I'm setting that time. And I find that I'm actually getting reasonable expectations of like what I can get done, where I was probably setting unreasonable expectations for what I was like expecting myself to get done in a single day. So all that to say, I think the body keeps the score. I think life stress totally adds up. And I've been learning, I guess, stress management techniques of how I can build back. And these things have been really helpful, along with, of course, asking for help and connecting with friends, as we've already talked about. I think connection is just so big. So yeah.
This is huge, Elena. I love this. And especially this point about like us setting unreasonable expectations for ourselves. I mean, I do this all the time. And then it's tough because I think it really fuels that negative self-talk. If you like set an expectation and then you don't actually meet it, and then maybe you try to meet it the next day and you can't because it's built up, and it's this sort of like snowball effect of just like really not feeling so great about yourself, but being able to chunk things out into much smaller tasks. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I've been like, I might get 45 minutes of good work done on a given day, if that. Like not a full 8-hour workday. It's like maybe I've got 45 minutes in me and my brain is just not there for some of that other stuff. And so chunking out like, well, I'm going to get done this thing that'll take me about 45 minutes, and not also planning to do items like I through J on my to-do list, I think is probably what's been most helpful. But I love how you articulated it here with like actually making those blocks and having different blocks for the movement and body piece as well as the work piece. Because I imagine that in some circumstances, like that piece could be a nap and it could be a massage. Like I said, a massage and a latte, like if you need that on that given day. So I just love how you thought about that.
I thought of chunking too, exactly when you were talking, Elena. And I heard something recently. I think it was in relation actually to Kona, or somebody talking to a pro triathlete, and they said, what's the big difference you see between the pros and the amateurs? And this person said, it was a high level triathlete, and I don't remember exactly who it was. It said, we're just really good at chunking things. We're really good at taking a really big task and chunking it down to smaller bits. And that's one of our huge competitive advantages. And I feel like I've been thinking a lot about that recently. Same thing in terms of my personal life, in terms of my work life. Like, how do I chunk this thing so that I feel like I accomplished something? And maybe it is just only 30 minutes of work or whatever it is, but like I did it. So I love the idea of chunking and the boundaries is what you talked about.
Yeah, it's. I think it relates to process goals versus outcome goals, which we've talked about a lot before too. And then the other famous quote of, happiness equals expectations minus reality. So if you're not setting yourself up with good expectations, then to Katie's point, maybe you're setting yourself up for more negative self-talk, which I certainly was. So it's just been super helpful. And I am finding that I'm able to actually start stacking those bricks again without kind of tearing myself down where I'm comparing to where I used to be, which comparison is also not helpful, even if you're comparing to your former self. So all of these things I think can be helpful. And then I will kind of just segue that into the next one, which in the spirit of vulnerability, which I have been opening up more to friends, I realized that I was actually still having a stigma on my own mental health. And I think, Jim, you mentioned it earlier that we do have these personas as athletes that we can always push through anything. And with some of the stuff I've been dealing with, I think there's some brain chemistry probably that I am not working out as much as I used to. And maybe that's affecting my brain in different ways. And also it's been a struggle to, have grief around not feeling like my former self, and the grief that I experienced with a friend dying earlier this year and all this stuff. And I was realizing I was kept thinking that I could think my way out of it. I could get myself in the right headspace and just get myself going again. And that was almost as frustrating itself to feel like I was not able to just think my own way and get myself going, because I'm always able to push through whatever. And I realized that I was carrying that stigma with me about mental health. So I had more conversations about that with people. I'm not saying medication is always the answer. I just had conversations with people and then started medication, and it's been really, really helping me. So just if you're out there and you're thinking that, wow, I just feel stuck and I should be able to get out of this, I just really encourage you to own the fact that it's okay to not be okay, to go talk to people about it. If medication is a good option for you, it can be another tool in your toolkit. I'm not saying that you have to be on it forever. I don't plan on being on it forever. I actually had several false starts where I started taking it and then stopped really quickly because I freaked myself out because I thought, oh, I'm fine today. Maybe I don't need this. So just a note, and I wanted to share that because I have realized that I carried that stigma, and we talk about that stigma often, and I think I'm aware of it, and I was doing it to myself. So hopefully other people can recognize that in themselves as well, if needed.
Thank you, Elena, for sharing this. This is so, so, so powerful. And I think we need to do everything to take the stigma out of this stuff. And honestly, the way that I've increasingly started to think about this is your brain is a body part, just like any other body part. And we're not going to stigmatize people for taking a ton of ibuprofen because they messed up their knee. And we similarly should not be stigmatizing taking any type of medication for mental health or running down the list of other tools that are in the toolkit. Candidly, I have seen I work with a mindset coach, I work with a regular therapist, I work with a therapist for some sort of trauma-related symptoms. It's all part of my toolkit. And I'm sort of interested in figuring out how can we optimize all facets of where we're at, and realizing that our mind controls so much of what we can do as athletes in our physical body. I don't know, it's really, really important. So thank you for sharing that. And we'll be curious to just kind of see what you're noticing, especially from the athlete lens, but glad that it's starting to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I will keep you posted. It reminded me too of, I think Catherine on our previous episode where we interviewed her had mentioned that your brain chemistry is altered by all these things that we don't even think about, like social media and working out, of course. So I was fearful of medication being a natural way, but not really. It's just another tool in the toolkit. So yeah, great. Okay, so I will transition to now an actual endurance related topic. Specifically endurance, we're not
related.
Those are totally endurance. We're all related, but
And we're a life psychology podcast. So anyway, right. I digress. Go ahead.
Endurance athletes are people too, by the way.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so this is all for anyone who's aware of the marathon scene. CIM is this weekend. It's a big marathon out in California. It's well known for being a very fast course, and a lot of people go to do it for specific pace goals. I know a lot of people try to qualify for Boston there. So this has come up because I have a couple athletes that are running that, and a couple, I think several friends who are running it too, actually. So it'll be exciting to track everyone on Sunday. I'm very excited for that. But I know a lot of people that are going for very specific pace goals, and I think that's a really tricky thing that I just wanted to break down a little bit more for people that are thinking about races with very specific pace goals. Because first off, I want to uplift that. It's awesome to shoot your shot, and I want people to have this goal and go for it and think that they can do it. So we usually, with athletes I work with, they will have a pace goal and we can dial it in through training. And typically I find that people are actually more underselling themselves than overselling, but that's not always the case. But I will have that conversation through training based on heart rate and how people are feeling on longer runs. But I want people to own the fact that they can take a big shot and go for a pace goal. I just think that if you have a pace goal, then a few things are really important. The first, I definitely think it's important to outline your A, B, and C goals if you have a pace goal, because as we've talked about before, there's a lot of things that you can do to control the controllables for a race that can set you up to have the best day ever. And when you have a best day ever, it feels magical. It's so great when you're having your best day that you could have. But there's also a lot of uncontrollables in a marathon. So things might not go your way and you might not feel your best for XYZ reason. So when you go out, you can start with your A goal, which is your main pace goal. But if things aren't going your way, it is really important to have a B and a C goal lined up that you can quickly mentally shift to so that you avoid spiraling, because you might be able to recover. But if you spiral, then I think that you end up just finding it really hard to feel yourself motivated through the rest of the race. You're like, what the heck am I doing? You might start walking a little bit. I don't know. It just can be really hard. So one thing that I think about is there's a quote in the product world, at least, where it's like, have strong opinions loosely held. So you're trying to learn and optimize. I think about having big goals loosely held. So set your goals very large and go for it, but then also be ready to be flexible if things aren't going your way. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of it. It just means that that might not be the day, but it also could be your best day ever. So to that end, I think from a pacing perspective, I usually advise people to start out at slightly slower or you're at your goal pace. That's really just to help you stay calm and comfortable at the start and really prevent you from going out too hard, which is probably the number one mistake that people make in marathon pacing. So start out at your marathon pace or just a few seconds slower, just like hopefully feeling comfortable. And then you can really evaluate in that first 5K how you're feeling and either keep it going steady at that comfortable pace right around at your goal pace. Or if you're not feeling it for whatever reason, conditions are hot, you're not feeling good, your heart rate is too elevated and you can check that, you're feeling like you're up in your threshold zone, then you can make smart adjustments and you might be able to recover, but you're not going to burn yourself out too soon. And then if you're feeling good and you're at your goal pace, and similar, if your heart rate is saying that, hey, I'm actually feeling steady, I'm having a good day, then you know that you can go push it that second half and do really, really well. It just means that you're being smart about your pacing and you're being smart about how you're thinking about your goals. And it's tricky because I'm rambling here now a little bit, but like pace goals are hard because it's a very outcome driven goal and we talk about the process. So I'm trying to put some process to how you can think about pacing to get that outcome, but also don't be so hung up on the outcome that you don't have fun with the race that you're having and don't take the lessons from it. Like as a quick example, the very first marathon that I ran with a pace goal, I completely blew up. And it was such a good learning experience for me because I went back and had the same pace goal 6 months later and had a completely different race and had my best day ever and hit that pace goal. And it was all because I had a different framework for approaching it. So just some notes for if you're thinking about pace goals.
I really like this point here about heart rate can be very helpful, but it's not everything. And I was actually talking to an athlete who's actually racing at CIM this week. And, his Garmin says, he's like a 165 threshold heart rate, but we've seen this over and over again, like in race situations, more closer to like 175. So we all know like do training is one thing, racing is another thing, heart rate's up, that kind of thing. So we were just sort of talking through that, like, yeah, I think it's not 165, it's 175. Like, yeah, it's a guide, but like certainly if you're at 170, don't panic, just go for it. And the other thing I didn't realize that CIM is it's a super fast course. And I think something like 40% of the people who race at CIM actually qualify for Boston. It's a really fast race. I didn't realize how fast it was. I guess he was saying he looked up one of his friends who ran like a 240 marathon, which is a really vast marathon. And apparently that guy came in like 800th overall. So like, this is a fast course. There's a lot of fast people. And I think the last point, Elena, I want to ask you about, like, do you recommend people, getting with a group of people, helping, sort of help bridge some of the early miles or late miles? Or how do you talk through like group dynamics with folks?
That's a really good question. If people are going for like one of the, I guess, classic pace goals, where they have the person with the flag, like 3 hours or 3:15, I do think that can be helpful for some people. However, and this might be a little bit of bias, like personal bias, I am really in tune with my feel, and I want athletes to also be really in tune with their feel. And like we said, heart rate's helpful, but it's not everything. And your race might not be, and probably shouldn't be, running the exact same pace all the way through. So I'm more encouraging of athletes to try to be in their zone and not be set up with a group, because I've also heard horror stories of like the pacing not being correct pacing. It's totally fine if you like don't want to run with your watch or something like that, but I have found it more helpful for people to adjust a little bit. Like I said, start a little bit slower, ease into it, see how you're feeling, make sure that you're staying comfortable. So it might mean that you're behind that target, but how great will it feel when you blow by that target a little bit later? So it's a trade-off, but I typically advise that it doesn't really help that much. What helps more is being in tune with your body and trying to make those smart decisions as you're going.
While I have the running expert here, I want to talk about super shoes for a moment. But I think my attitude is changing on super shoes. But how much do you have your runners do workouts in super shoes? Obviously, they're racing in super shoes, I assume. But
Yes.
what's the workout breakdown?
I like them to run in super shoes at least once on a long run, maybe twice, and once or twice the week before on like these short 3-4 mile runs just to get the feel dialed in. I don't think you need to run in super shoes for all of your training, obviously. I don't think you should, but I do think that not even like I would say the longest long run doing super shoes is fun and can like really simulate race day conditions, which we like to simulate race day conditions, although it's not necessary because you can still then have that fun, go out and run your super shoes like the week before the race and be like, oh, now I'm really feeling fast, and you boost your mental game. So I'm not too prescriptive on it. I find that most athletes do want to go run their last long run in their super shoes, and I'm like totally here for it because it's simulating race day conditions and it's fun. But yeah, they're powerful. And I even for myself, like my pair of super shoes are probably 3 years old at this point, and I need to go because I haven't raced a road marathon in a bit. So I was thinking of buying the new ones and just having them on hand so that if I need to feel fast, I can just go for a run because they are really such a mental boost. So I guess the summary there is I would just have people use it as a mental boost of like the week before the race and your last long run, just like feel it out, see how it goes. And then, of course, for the marathon, you can break them out and everyone will be wearing the exact same shoes. It's just so funny to watch the start of a marathon and everyone has the same pair of shoes on.
That's awesome. And I have to tell you, I was reflecting as you were talking about this on what we're actually going to call this episode. And I think it might be like the body keeps the score in super shoes. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So it's really good stuff. Okay. Well, we have somehow ended up with like a lot of content, a long episode. Let's transition this into a couple of fun listener questions to close things out. So first one is, how far out from your goal race should you get on a training plan? And a lot of people are thinking about this right now because we're at the beginning of the season. So I wrote down a couple of thoughts here. First one, if you're doing an Ironman, at least 28 to 32 weeks. I know that sounds like a long time, but it takes a long time to prepare for an Ironman. That being said, if you're someone who has a very high experience level, so like level 3-4 athlete, you can probably do it on more like, a 6-month plan, 24 weeks, something like that. If you're doing a half Ironman, I usually say somewhere from like 20 to 28 weeks, again, depending on experience level. Olympic is into that 16 to 20 range. Sprint might be 12 to 16 weeks. And then I will defer to actually you guys on what you're thinking for marathons, ultras, and half marathons in terms of time.
Yeah, I can jump in. And Jim, if you have other opinions, I would love to hear. For marathons, I agree. It's so experience dependent, but I typically end up being between 16 and 20 weeks. Of course, if people want to go longer, then we're doing some base building, and I feel great about that. But 16 to 20 weeks is pretty standard. For ultras, it's so athlete dependent on what they have done before. I do think that for like the 50K to 50 mile range, it ends up being in the 20 to 30 week range of like just where we want to have, like for 30K or 50K, it's similar to a marathon. So we're doing all the stuff that we would do and maybe have some more base building behind it. And similar for the 50 mile, it's a similar build, honestly. Over that like 100K, 100 miles, I have a bias, and like I mentioned earlier, of my coach who helped make sure that I had a big base before I even went for that. If the athlete's already done ultras, then it's probably going to be the same range, as I said, like we can do like 20 to 30 weeks. But if you don't have as much of a base, then I'm talking like a year. Like it's probably going to be like a year of building a really good base and being steady with it, and maybe even longer depending on how that goes. So for half marathon, I think I'm more on the shorter end for that, probably on like the 12 to 16 week frame. But again, the more base you have, the better.
Yeah, my answer for Ironman and for ultra runs, 100 miles is 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. I think it's a fair thing to say.
And that's like having a full season and then recovering from that season for many years in a row. So like when we say 28 to 32 weeks, that's also already assuming that you can like ride your bike and you know how to swim and you can do all those things. So it's a nuanced question with nuanced answers because we're all the captains of nuance here on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. Can I still do group workouts while I'm on a coaching plan? Jim, take it away.
Absolutely not. No way. It's our way or no way. Oh, yeah. We get this question a lot. It's great, especially for folks who live in urban areas, even rural areas. There's always a group, usually a Tuesday night track group. So the answer is yes, of course. Stick with your group. It's great. It's one of the best physical stimulus you can get because you're just going to push yourself harder in a group. And number two is this socially, it fills your cup. So I think it serves so many good purposes. So the answer is absolutely, of course, stay on that plan. We'll work the plan around the social engagements that you have with running, or maybe or it's a weekly bike, whatever it is. Like, we will incorporate that in your plan. Stick with doing playful things with your friends.
Love it. And then last question here is, how do I get faster at running? I'd like to qualify for Boston or some other big running goal. I currently run 3 times per week.
That's for Elena. She knows how to run. She knows how to run.
No, I was gonna say, Jim, I really like what your answer. You roll on. I can just add a couple of things maybe.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I get asked this a lot, and yeah, I get, like, people are super busy, right? And there's lots of things going on, and athletics isn't everything to everybody. So some folks are running 3 times a week, and that's fine. But then I have to break it down and say, okay, well, what are your goals? What do you really want to do? What are your expectations? Getting back to that, right? And so there's a time and place for an effective dose, but it's just really hard to advance really in doing anything when you do it 3 times a week. So we really like to try to bump to 4 and then really to 5 times per week. And I've talked about this in a blog I put a link to, the power of 5x. But really, frequency is your friend, and it doesn't have to be like huge like workouts, like 5 days a week. One of those or 2 of those runs can be 30-minute runs, but we just need to get you on your feet, moving, building that aerobic base, that mechanical load, and that running efficiency. And you can only do that if you do it, up to 5 days a week.
And I just add to this too, that 5x piece goes for, like, if you want to get better at swimming, you should probably swim 5 times a week. And if you want to get better at biking, then maybe you should bike 5 times a week. And you can talk to your coach about how to best integrate that with your training plan.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I'll just add a couple quick notes on specifically the getting faster side. So definitely we want 5 times a week of running, and a lot of that can be Z1, Z2 because we want to build that base, as they said. But for other things I think are helpful, adding in strides. So you really want to build your top end speed. So with those Z2 runs at the end or during, throwing in, 4 by 30 seconds fast, 4 by 20 seconds fast, something like that. And you're really practicing that fast form. And then also throwing in 1 speed workout a week. That's where coming to a coach and getting help with what those speed workouts can look like. Because the other side of that is we're building your mechanical speed in addition to your aerobic base. So just some help there. Oh, and the last thing I was going to say is check your cadence. Ideally, we want your run cadence to be between like 170 to 190 strides per minute, which will be shown on most sport watches will have that. And if you're lower than that, then you're probably not running as efficiently. So you can really just focus on it might feel really weird at first, but like trying to pick up that cadence, and I think that will also help your speed over time.
I love it. We're going to have a lot of athletes getting fast in 2025, which segues us nicely to our last question, which is for all the coaches, what are we excited about in 2025? So I guess I can jump on this one first. I am actually getting excited to return to some level of routine. I feel like I have not had any routine in the last several weeks. I had an ankle injury. I had a bunch of life stuff happening. Now it's the holidays, and I am ready to actually be on that routine. So I may take some of the plans that I built for my athletes and just kind of get on those and see how that feels and try to really ground in that. And when I'm starting to feel like, wow, I might actually want to get in the floor, I want to get on my trainer, I think that's a good sign. So moving towards that and excited to get to for 2025.
Love that. Mine's pretty similar. I also would love to get back to routine. I'm just saying getting back to myself in some way, shape, or form, just getting back to where I feel good and solid throughout the day with energy. Fingers crossed, I will make it to UTMB in August. That's like my big goal, and not just for the running sake of it, but just for the family and friends who all want to come over to France. So that's the big goal that I'm excited for. So hopefully I can get there, and just getting back to feeling like I'm in a routine, as you said.
Nice. UTMB, big goal. Love it. That's incredible. Yeah. Mine is just, get super fit, back on the bike. I'm back on the bike quite a bit now. Hopefully return to running, sort of working on that a little bit right now, and get it back to some mountain stuff as well. So, and from a coaching perspective, just implementing, we've talked about a lot of things this year that we've learned, and I'm excited to implement a lot of these things, whether it's heat training or more uphill strides or whatever it is we've talked about, mental training. I just feel like this 2024 has been a rich learning experience. And so I'm just taking all this together, and like Katie said, building plans and already starting to see some of the stuff in the plans and go, this is super exciting. 2025 is going to be a fast, going to be a great year.
Love it. Okay, and now we're going to close out with challenge of the week and gear pick of the week. So my challenge is quick. It is dark at 3 o'clock right now, especially in the Boston area. So my challenge is to go to bed before 9 p.m. I've done that a bunch recently. It's been kind of great, especially as I'm coming off some really not so solid sleep. And last night, I think I went to bed at 8:30. And on Wednesdays, I get up to be back on my feet early around 4:30. And I actually slept for 8 hours straight from 8:30 to 4:30. And it was the best night of sleep I've had in a long time. So I don't know. I might stick on that. And that means that we have to wrap pretty soon because it's 8:22 right now. And we are really backing up against my bedtime. So we will close soon.
Well, my first answer to this question was I go to bed by 8 p.m. So because I know in all transparency, I've done that a number of times the last couple of weeks. So because
Yeah, it would have been it's I see you 9 p.m. and I raise you 8.
it was because it's true. I've 7:30. I'm like, is it too early to go to bed? Because I'm going to bed, and I have done that. So yeah, it's cold and dark out there, folks. So yeah, but anyway, so I changed it. So I said on Sunday evening is what I've been doing. So I've been going through my upcoming weekly calendar, and I've been back to chunking. I've been chunking out the hours and saying, okay, specifically this is the time. And Elena, you talked about this, exactly what I'm doing on Sunday, and I'm just writing out the chunks of time through the week so that just on Monday I can just hit play and play the schedule, and it sort of it just removes the friction, just decisions that I have to make. And so anyway, so I just encourage folks if you're finding I feel like I'm so time crunched, and yes, we're all time crunched, but if you can really just be super organized, especially on Sunday, look at your schedules, chunk it all out, find the extra 30 minutes to go for either an extra run or swim or a bike or something, or spend time with your family, whatever it is, but just find, you will find some extra time in there.
Love it. Yeah. And Jim and I are trading challenges from each other's insights this week because I have time on feet breaks. And this is just, if you're already on your feet all day, then you're crushing it and you're fine. But if you find yourself that you do a workout, or not do a workout, but you just have a very sedentary, I have a desk job, basically, just encourage trying to get 1 or 2 extra 10 to 20 minute time on feet, just outside breaks. These walks have just been so helpful for me, and it just breaks up the day really nicely in addition to just getting some fresh air. If it's raining too, then maybe just do some stretching or something inside, but some kind of time on feet break is helpful.
Okay, gear pick of the week. Our final favorite closing segment. Elena, why don't you take this one first?
Okay, I have kind of a bold one this week. But I'm just going for it because why not? We have so many gear picks of the week. But my husband and I decided to invest in a sweat tent portable sauna as our Christmas present to each other. And it's not cheap. It's $1,500, but we're paying for it monthly. And we also canceled our gym membership because we have all the stuff that we need at home. So our girl math is that we are actually saving money because we really only kept going for the sauna. But it has been magical. It's feels so lovely. It's a sauna that is a tent. It's very easy to set up. We put it in our backyard on our porch, and there's it has a wood stove. So you also get the joy of making a real fire and the smell of a real fire, and it kind of feels like you're camping, and you have a sauna in your backyard, and it gets up to 200 degrees if you want it to. We probably have it around 170-ish, and we've been doing it 2 to 3 times a week, and it just feels great. So if you're feeling like a bougie gift, I recommend it.
We've been talking about saunas when I saw this. I haven't even clicked on this link yet, so I'm totally excited to check it out. So is it canvas or insulated walls?
It honestly, if anyone's familiar with hunting tents, it kind of is that material. It's some kind of synthetic insulated material that, yeah, it's really lightweight and sets up super easily. And if we wanted to take it on a hut backcountry ski trip, we totally could. So not that it's light, it would be a big thing to take, but if we were committed to it, I would do it. So
this is so awesome. And honestly, we are only on this planet for so long. If you can, treat yourself. This is the coolest thing ever. And you're investing in quality time with Will. That's a big deal too.
Exactly. We were this feels really good to treat ourselves. So
well, this is funny because I'm looking at your gear pick of the week and then Jim's gear pick of the week. And I'm pretty sure that both of those are a big ticket item for your Christmas wish list. Mine is more of a stocking stuffer. So if you're looking for a stocking stuffer, I'm going to recommend the Skeeta headbands. I think maybe we've done Skeeta as a gear pick of the week before, but Skeeta season is upon us. It's a Vermont company. If you're from the Upper Valley, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, please check them out. But they have great headbands, hats, buffs, all different things that can keep you warm in the winter, and they will not break the bank necessarily like the sweat tent portable sauna or Jim's gear pick of the week. So definitely worthwhile for your bargain list.
Yeah, and if you want to see them modeled, you just go to the Hanover Co-op, and all styles are modeled, both the hats and the headbands at the Hanover Co-op.
Yeah, we've made the joke before that they won't let you in if you're not wearing skeeta at the co-op.
Right.
So
Exactly
be
right.
prepared.
Part of your membership. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So mine is bougie as well too. But I watched for like 2 years for this gear pick of the week. Finally pulled the trigger a couple months ago. It is the Rit Fit Smith machine. And so my son built a professional sort of squat rack downstairs, and it's super nice. But honestly, I'm kind of a weak triathlete, and just I wasn't using it as much because it's a little bit unstable. And I don't have a great back. And so I want to do more squats, and I always go to the Smith machine when I go to a gym. And so I thought, okay, I don't belong to a gym. I need to have a Smith machine. And so I bought one, and it's like $600. So yes, it's very expensive. But the other thing I've learned is that not only can you do like controlled squats, but you can do really heavy shoulder presses. You can do this one has a lat pull down. It has a pull part. There's just so many things you can do. And so anyway, looking at I have barbells, dumbbells, I have kettlebells, I have a professional squat rack. The thing that I use the most, and I can just sit there and go up to the machine and all the weights around it, is the Smith machine. And I just do tons of things. You can do bench press on it as well too. So it's the one machine, I think, to rule them all. So I recommend that Santa bring you one of these.
I love the recommendation for Santa. We were sending all these to Santa, and I hope he brings me a sweat tent that I could put on my roof deck in the downtown of Boston. That'd be fantastic.
With a wood stove. They'll love that. Yeah.
And the brownstones of Boston are definitely like, I'm sure that's allowed in these buildings. Awesome. Okay, well, this has been great. Thank you guys for bearing with a sort of random episode that I actually really enjoyed recording with you two. So it was a lot of fun. And I will say, anyone who's newish, please consider dropping us a rating or review or sharing the podcast with someone that you know. We're just about to hit 1 year of the pod. This might go live just around our 1 year anniversary, which is absolutely wild. So thank you to everyone who has been listening to this point. And yeah, we will catch you next time.
Thanks, peeps.